Well, welcome to Sabbath School, and welcome especially to those that are visiting. I've met Wendy, who's visiting us for the first time, so very welcome, Wendy, and I hope you've enjoyed the program so far, and I hope you enjoy our Sabbath School. So, Sabbath School today, one of the great joys that Cherie and I share is the travel. And you'll see that my program today is entitled Bayonets and Butterflies, and it tells a story that attracted my attention when we visited Albany. But before we get there, let's just have a word of prayer and to thank God for being here and part of the program. Dear Lord, we just want to thank you. We thank you for the freedom that we have to worship. We think of the people that have made sacrifices, those soldiers, and those people that have laid their life on the line, and more importantly, the sacrifice of your Son, Jesus. We thank you, and we thank you that we have the freedom today to study and to learn and love more about him and just how essential he is to our being and our salvation. So today, as we study this, we just want to uphold Jesus. We want to look to him and become more like him. We see our troubled world, we see so many problems. We know there are people here that are suffering from illnesses and sickness, and we all look forward to that wonderful day when all of those things will be left behind us and we can just live with you forever. Thank you. Well, bayonets and butterflies. So what's all that about? Well, when Cherie and I travelled and visited the War Memorial at Albany, I was drawn to this photograph of this man. He was a general that I had not heard of, and I was intrigued by his name because his name was Harold, but it gave him a nickname of Pompey Elliott. And it described him as a general, and what particularly intrigued me was he was also a lawyer and later a senator. And I'm always interested in gathering lawyer stories because there are so many bad lawyer stories. It's nice to actually be able to present a good one. And let me assure you, there are good lawyers out there, and sadly 98% of lawyers give the rest of us a bad name. So here we are with Pompey. So Pompey, what was Pompey and why is he so important to this story? Well, when you go to Albany, it is a magnificent location. I have to admit, Western Australia has the most beautiful beaches, the whitest sand, and the bluest waters. And as you stand here outside the Albany War Memorial and you see this magnificent sculpture and look out to King George Sound, you think, wow, why is Albany War Memorial here? What is the importance of Albany and why would they spend so much money building this magnificent war museum there? Well, the reality is that Albany played a very important part in the First World War. So what actually happened was that, and perhaps give you a little bit background of Pompey. Pompey is one of those fellows who was born really at the wrong time. He was born young enough but old enough to actually be called up and serve in the Boer War. So the first war experience he had was when he was 22. He went to the Boer War. He won a DSO there for bravery. And you would think, and I'm sure he thought, that those fighting days were over, but not at all, because 14 years later, he found himself on a ship bound for Albany. So all of the convoys that left Australia actually congregated in King George Sound. And this is a photograph of the first ships that actually arrived there just before they all went off to Egypt, where they trained before they went to Gallipoli. This is one of the first photographs and one of the only photographs taken, because what actually ended up happening was there ended up being 28 Australian ships, 10 ships from New Zealand, and they stayed there until the convoy got big enough to move on. What that meant, of course, was that there were 28,000 troops on all of these ships in King George Sound. And what do you do with 28,000 men on these troop ships? Well, the answer was they had to make regular sorties into the little town of Albany, which at that time only had 3,500 people. And you can imagine what a sight it was for them to see all of the troops landing from time to time, getting their exercise, and walking and marching through the town. But today, when you look out at King George Sound, it looks like this. It's hard to believe that is really where the convoy left. And what actually is the importance of it is that it was actually from this convoy that the dawn service was actually formulated and started some years later, because this is the site that so many Australians and New Zealanders last saw of Australia before they left on their journey across to Egypt and then on to Gallipoli. And there's this plaque outside the museum. But what intrigued me was actually having a look at that sculpture, because what this sculpture is it's a light horseman, an Australian, riding there, and he's leaning down to help a New Zealand horseman who's crouching down there after his horse has been shot or injured. And I think it's a wonderful demonstration of the Anzac spirit and the comradeship that they all felt. So Pompey got his name because he had a short fuse. There was a very famous AFL player who got the name Pompey, and so a lot of people at that time, if they had a bit of a short temper, ended up with the nickname of Pompey. And it's no surprise to me that someone in Cherie's family ended up with the same nickname. So Pompey hated this nickname, but the troops loved him. And they loved him because he loved them. He was a general that just didn't sit behind the enemy lines. He led from the front. And he led the part of the 2nd Battalion that actually landed at Gallipoli on the 25th of April. On that very day, he was shot. He was shot in the leg. He was taken off, but he was quickly patched up and repaired, and he commanded the force that actually went and took Lone Pine, the fiercest fighting. 4 of the 7 Victoria Crosses were in the men under his command. And then from there, he ended up in France. You would think he would have done enough, but the story that I'm telling you now of Bayonets and Butterflies actually revolves around not Gallipoli, but his time in France. So I want you to imagine that after the horrors of Gallipoli, he ends up in France. He's given direct orders that he is to capture Villers-Bretonneux. It's been captured by the Germans. The Germans have to be halted. And so they set up a command force in a most magnificent chateau. And as Pompey walks through this chateau, he is astounded, not just at the collection of ornaments and potteries and whatever that were owned by the owner of that chateau, but what absolutely blew him away was a magnificent collection of butterflies. Over 20,000 butterflies, all beautifully preserved. And he realised that unless he took direct action, they were probably going to be destroyed in the artillery fire that was certain to come. And so he ordered his men, we've got to preserve these. And so he had his men, before the battle, package these 20,000 butterflies, and they took them safely where they were later preserved, and you can actually see them today. And I wish I'd known about it, because next time I go to Paris, I'm going to go to the Paris Natural History Museum, because that collection is still there and regarded probably as the most magnificent butterfly collection in the world. But after doing that, where does the bayonets come in? The bayonets come in because after preserving all of these beautiful butterflies collections, these soldiers reassemble and he gives them the order to fix bayonets, because they decided that what they were going to do that night was to steal in the dead of night into the German forces and take the city back with hand-to-hand combat. And that's what they did. You can imagine just how awful it was, how awful the losses were, but they were victorious, and it had a lasting impact on the war and halted the Germans. And later, at the end of the war, the owner of that collection could not believe it when he learnt that it had actually been saved. And you can see here that what Pompey did was because he was so moved, and when he met the owner of that chateau, he said, I could not have been happier to have had the opportunity to have given service to science and the French and show how much we are friends and allies. You know, you would think after all that service, after all that conflict, that he deserved to have a happy retirement. So I'm sitting in this theatre and I'm watching this movie, and I didn't know how it ended, and I generally do not go to any movies unless I know they have a happy ending, because I'm not interested in anything that isn't pure escapism or true. But sadly, what happened to Pompey was that after the war, he said, our servicemen are not being treated properly, fairly, and with respect. And so he stood for Parliament, he was elected as a senator, and he fought for the rights of those returnist servicemen. And again, you would hope, wouldn't you, that he was properly honoured and had a happy life ever after. And as I saw that slide, I was shocked with the next slide, because in 1931, traumatised by post-traumatic syndrome, he in fact took his own life. And his funeral is one of the largest funerals Australia has ever witnessed. It was in Melbourne. They had over 1,000 soldiers attend, and thousands of people lined the streets to pay a tribute to Pompey. But as I said to you, what really interested me was actually seeing this plaque here, which actually tells the story of where our dawn service comes from. Because when the First World War ended, Reverend White came back to Western Australia, and he was the first person to actually ever go out into the Sound and to lay a wreath. And he made the observation that this was a sacred site, because that harbour and that part of Australia was the last part of Australia a lot of our servicemen saw. So it was actually the Reverend White, when he actually went back to Western Australia in 1929, that actually instigated that dawn service. And when you go back, as I say, to King George Sound now, you see it like this. And without the sacrifice of those people, without the leadership of Pompey, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't be able to enjoy the freedom that we have. We wouldn't be able to study our lesson today. And what a privilege it is. I mean, a wonderful sacrifice for those people. But here we are today, free to worship as we want and free to actually study and learn more about Jesus in our lesson today. Jesus, the centre of our worship today. So thank you for being here today. Stay and join in class. There's a class here, and if you don't like the look of those people, have a look at someone else going out the door, because they'll be able to show you to a class where much nicer and better looking people are, I'm sure. But thank you for being here today. God bless you and happy Sabbath.